And welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Recently I was reading an article, John, we're talking about nutriodine, and the amount of disinformation and misinformation and just plain ignorance over iodine is unbelievable, to be honest with you. And by the way, this includes even within the so-called naturopathic realm. And this article I was reading was actually by Dr. Alana Polo. Iodine deficiency and weight loss is the next big thing, of course. There's a big difference between just taking iodine like iodized salt or, some seaweed that contains iodine.
Right.
And taking something like Tesla-activated monatomic iodine that resurrects your mitochondria and your energetics of your cells. It's a completely different thing. In fact, if you take an iodized salt or if you take an iodide, if you take too much, you'll actually shut down your peripheral conversion of T4 to T3. You'll actually cause the increased danger, which is why things like the potassium iodate tablets, the government had to shut down the sale of them because they knew that if people were taking them longer at the recommended dosage, longer than 8 days, they were increasing the risk of developing retinal problems, kidney damage, and peripheral neuropathy. So I was just reading this article. I don't even want to go through some of the points here. It's like so stupid, it's just mind-boggling. First off, everyone, and this is Dr. Broder Barnes has discovered this, everybody that has heart disease is hypometabolic. And it's a better term than hypothyroid because there's a number of reasons why you can have hypometabolism. The primary common denominator is a decrease in T3 in ratio to reverse T3. So if you give someone an infusion of reverse thyroid hormone, you can put them in a deep space and put them in suspended animation. So the suspended animation hormone is RT3, reverse thyroid hormone, that's converted through the 5-deiodinase, not the 5'-deiodinase enzyme. And the problem is when you need 7 minerals to actually deiodinate thyroid from T4 to T3. T4 is not a hormone, it's a prohormone. And until it's converted, it's 1/4000th the power of T3 on the receptor of the crystal gallia of the mitochondria to stimulate oxidative phosphorylation and production of ATP and NADH. NADH, by the way, is one of the anti-aging nutraceuticals. In fact, we're just adding that to our new protocol. We'll be bringing that out here shortly. Along with D-ribose, things like our propionyl L-carnitine, Vascucare, and CoQ10. But the most important thing to resurrect your mitochondria is Tesla-activated monatomic iodine. And it's activated in your body. Your body makes a very tiny, tiny amount. It exports it around every tissue. And you can't peripherally deiodinate thyroid iodine in your tissue to convert T4, which is a prohormone, to T3. The reason is, and I asked doctors just to see if they really know what they're talking about, including specialists, the half-life of T3 is how many minutes or hours, John? 5.5 minutes. So if you give somebody a bolus of T3, which is Cytomel, and I was there actually before Cytomel was produced, it was my recommendation at the University of Calgary and the universities in the States for the development of Cytomel, so I was actually one of the original developers. And they tried to make a slow-release form of T3, which is wrong-headed. You can't do that. Not only that, if you have elevated reverse T3, because you have metabolic syndrome, which makes reverse T3 at elevated levels, it'll block your T3. So even if your T3 is normal, elevated RT3 makes your TSH test by your doctor completely useless. And how many doctors know this? None. Zero, nada. And that includes endocrinologists. They don't understand. And the way to prove it, is to measure their oxygen and carbon dioxide production with a nasal clamp test called a oxidative metabolism screen test done in a laboratory. Now, the problem is, you see, there's a lot more science to this than people realize, and hypometabolism is behind all heart disease, all diabetes, and all obesity. Everybody who's obese basically is hypometabolic. Because your body has a way of compensating. If you take in too many calories, it always, normally in a healthy person, would and should burn off the excess calories. But if you can't have that capacity, even as little as half a slice of bread per day will put on 30 or 40 pounds in 1 year on you. So people say, well, I thought people that are overweight overeat. No, the University of Philadelphia did research on this, and they discovered, and this is published 20 years ago, that they pair matched over 2,000 men and women of the same age, height, and sex, and they found absolutely no difference in calorie intake or exercise in people who are obese and people who are not. What they did find is a difference in their metabolism. So it's a metabolic disorder. When people try to say it's behavioral, that's hogwash. People that are skinny have just as bad eating habits as people who are overweight. The fact is, what they have different is a metabolism problem. And people don't approach it that way, and as a result, they don't realize that not correcting thyroid, according to Dr. Broder Barnes, this is what causes plaque in your arteries, stroke, and heart attack. This is what causes diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, and eventually diabetes of the brain, which is basically Alzheimer's. It's where your brain cells no longer can metabolize sugar. Why is Nutridyne so amazing? Well, it really fixes everything. And once you start fixing the mitochondria, your insulin resistance drops, your level of T3 increases, your reverse T3 drops, your basal core temperature increases, your levels of inflammatory cytokines and adipokines coming from your fat tissue decreases. I mean, literally everything starts to get fixed as you start increasing Nutrimedical. And it can take a while, but it works. And, when I hear all these people that pretend to be experts, whether they're naturopaths, MDs, or whatever, they have no idea. They're going to wait for me to teach them, and believe me, I'm at this third of a century, that they have no idea what they're talking about. All of them. That means naturopaths, MDs, DOs, and endocrinologists. They're all wrong. You have to understand this is far more complex. And in fact, if you're going to do deep space travel, you want your people in suspended animation on RT3, reverse thyroid hormone, and their body metabolism will drop, which in fact is why adipose tissue makes RT3, so it puts itself into suspended animation. So if you do a thermogram, you'll find if someone's overweight, the areas of their overweight, their core body temperature and thermogenic generation of heat is down to almost zero. So people say, how did they get fat? And it's because their metabolism went into suspended animation. Interesting, eh?
Very much.
Yeah. Now, so let's talk about Nutridyne. This is very unique. There's a lot of hoo-ha out there. A lot of people say they think they've made something like this. I get frustrated and furiously angry when I hear people who have no expertise in this area pretend to have knowledge and say they have a thyroid shield from Fukushima Daiichi, or they got something that's going to resurrect your mitochondria. That's total garbage. Total garbage. In fact, if you take the wrong forms of iodine, whether it's in glycerin or if it's iodide tablets or iodoral or iota caps, these can harm you if you take more than the very basic amount. Not so with Nutridyne. Your body, if you put it on your arms, will suck it up so fast in 10 minutes you go back and say, where's the tattoo on my skin of the Nutridyne? The body says, I want that. And it goes in. You say, man, that's amazing. It's just gone. You put it in water and it doesn't taste bad like regular iodine. It goes in and your body says, you just feel this boost of energy. You say, whoa, what was that? And if you have pathogens in your body, I had a gentleman this morning whose mother had TB. We gave him, his recommendation was Nutridyne and Alcinmed. I tell him, look, you take Nutridyne, your TB positive time test, and the fact that they couldn't see the bone focus inside your lungs, which is a granuloma indicating at some point, if your immune system weakens and you get older, you're going to get a massive explosion of tuberculosis because you have a bone focus, even though they can't see it on the regular CT, because they're not going to, on this X-ray, they're not going to do a CT scan or a bronchoscopy and a biopsy to see if they can find a granuloma with TB bacteria present, the tuberculin bacillus. The fact is, it's there because your skin test, your time test is positive. If he takes his Nutridyne for the rest of his life, he'll never have TB. If we have people that have chikungunya, pot spine in India, cancer even, we know that cancer is a mycobacteria or fungus that triggers off cancer cell genetic changes. The Nutridyne will prevent that from happening. If you've got blocked arteries, if you're in congestive heart failure because your mitochondria are failing, we use a combination of nutraceuticals like our VascuCare, propionyl carnitine, CoQ10, the only non-crystallizing, things like mitochondrial catalyst, mitocarnitine, and uridine. But the most important of all is Nutridyne. And I tell people, if you're not taking Nutridyne, and of course we're trying to overcome fluoridation, chlorination, or bromidation that's generally displacing your normal thyroid hormone, and what your hormone now has, instead of having iodine, which is the only way it works, it has fluoride, chloride, or bromide that totally screw up your mitochondria. So you're drinking fluoridated water, you're having fluoridated things in your food, the soil is clean with sulfur fluoride, you wonder why, or hypometabolic, you're getting fat, you're developing a dyslipidemia, you're getting metabolic syndrome. Don't wonder, your mitochondria are hogtied and duct taped and dying. Back in a minute with John. The NutriMed 7 for Heaven sale is still on until midnight tonight. I'll tell you, the next one will, I think, not be until the 4th of July sale. It's a bit away, and hopefully by that time I'll have the book ready, Dr. U. And in that book I'll be discussing a lot of these things, including references and how to do testing to validate that everything that Dr. Deagle says is the truth. As I say, I like to validate it. I tell people, don't believe anything I say, but do check out the references, do check out with testing, and then once you've tested, actually just sit there quietly and pray. And praying means you're going to find out, like, oh, the light goes on over your head, and you say, oh, it's true. So, John, when you make this Tesla-activated iodine, this process is very unique, and you're the only one in history that's been able to do it. Other people pretend to. Even the people, there was an Indian, I think, chemist that tried to after with Edgar Casey. And a lot of people think they can just throw a few wires and kind of put electricity through iodine solution and they can do it. It's bizarre, the stuff that people will say, isn't it? And they don't understand, without the higher energy forms of iodine, you can't displace fluoride, chloride, or bromide, which is probably part of the reason why these things are so toxic. If you take normal, let's say, iota-caps, iodoral, or some of these inferior iodines, it will shut down your thyroid. It's actually toxic to it, and it can't displace fluoride, chloride, or bromide, which displaces iodine from your normal thyroid molecule and will actually block your thyroid gland. So they don't understand that they're actually putting themselves in danger by taking these inferior products, are they?
Right, that's very true. It's the Tesla activation that allows us to pull the molecule apart and give an equal amount of energy to each iodine atom that is removed. And by doing that, we ensure they don't come back together. If one had a high energy level and one had a low, then the higher energy would overcome the lesser energy and pull it back together and make another molecule. But by keeping the same energy levels, we are able to ensure that the atoms do not go back together and form a molecule, and it stays available in the body with our Nutrimedical. Stays helpful and useful with an energy level that will really assist the body when it's used. When the body decides it's ready to use it, finds a cell, a halogen, something that's out of the ordinary in the body, it can release the energy and destroy it, or it can provide it to the mitochondria, go into the cells, and be useful there. It's very, very unique process we've discovered, and we do have a patent on that process. Nobody else can copy it.
Now, the important thing, John, is if I was to describe the primary, if you want to call it, biospheric things that are happening to the planet, I would say we're in a massive extinction level event. And the causes of that extinction level event are multiple. The first thing is that we're dumping toxins into the biosphere at the rate of 7 new biotoxins per day. And the vast majority of the worst biotoxins are actually halides. These are things like trihalomethane, trichloroethylene, all kinds of different molecules, chloride, fluoride, and bromide, and they all displace iodine from the thyroid molecule, and basically mitochondria and all living eukaryotic organisms are destroyed. So it's causing a mitochondrial apocalypse. It's causing an extinction level event to wipe out species. If you look at the effect, for example, of Fukushima Daiichi at the 200-plus radioisotopes, Nutrimedicine is one of the few things that will actually not just block radioiodine-131, but actually resurrect mitochondriogenesis to make new mitochondria and protect the mitochondria there from destruction, and reduce free radicals by normalizing energy metabolism. The problem is that between radiotoxins, scalar radiation, by the way, Nutrimedicine will block scalar radiation from smart meters, Wi-Fi networks, and cell phones. And then we have increased cosmic background radiation now because the ozone layer is thinning by with the magnetosphere 5% per decade. The amount of ultraviolet light, high energy, molecule energy, cosmic rays, X-rays, etc., are getting to ground level on the planet is increasing dramatically. It's 73% higher ultraviolet B or higher energy, just ultraviolet light, than just 23 years ago. So people should understand that what we're basically in is an ELE, an extinction level event. And the primary target is mitochondria, number one. When your mitochondria go, that's when the cells go, because you start producing more free radicals as mitochondria get damaged, and they destroy cell membranes, enzymes, and the ability for you epigenetically to express your genome, your potential. So when we're looking at anti-aging, really aging is what I call signal-to-noise ratio, where the signal is you got to be able to use extracellular matrix like a mountain red velvet. You got to regenerate collagen, which is a superconductor for biophotons in the body, and the template for laying down every organ and structure is a collagen if you want to call it, scaffolding for your cells. And if you don't have the proper energetics in your mitochondria, you can't express anything. And, if you look at, for example, someone to say, if they're going to live longer, it's how healthy their mitochondria are from their mother, their grandmother, and their great-grandmother if they didn't die traumatically. Determines their potential lifespan. And if you take nutraceuticals to protect your mitochondria and help keep them healthy, it will lengthen your lifespan. It'll reduce the damage to your mitochondria and the free radical load they'll produce. So when people start taking Nutridyne, here's the head-to-toe things that I found. I want to have you reflect on it. They get smarter right away. They stop having infections, sinus infections, coughs, colds. Their blood sugar comes down. Their body temperature goes up, their core body temperature. If they've been on thyroid medication, their thyroid gland actually regenerates, and over the next 6 months to 2 years, you'd eventually not need thyroid at all. Their thyroid gland usually regenerates very quickly when they're taking it over anywhere from 6 to 24 months on average, we find. They'll notice that if they've had vascular disease, they stop having progression. If they have it, it starts to regress, especially if they take our other nutraceuticals to prevent oxidative stress and production of we call monocytes that die after eating oxidized fatty acids. Because when you reduce your free radical load, oxidized fatty acids are eliminated. A lot of the things we call aging basically are a lack of energetics, a lack of structural proteins and enzymes. So even mineralization of your tissues gets better because you have the energy to pump the minerals in and maintain the proper ratio across the cell membrane, so the life force or the bioimpedance of tissues. And you can test this. I had one in my office, a machine where you can do a bioimpedance. You put an electrode on the right hand and right foot. It'll print a little ticker tape that tells you exactly what the charge is across the cell. That transmembrane potential of minerals is totally dependent on how much T3 is generated and how much Tesla-activated monatomic iodine is there to catalyze that process. And every body compartment is separate. Your brown fat compartment, your brain compartment, your skin compartment, and your skeletal muscles in your liver. Every organ and system is regulated by your autonomic nervous system in the presence of 7 minerals, and most importantly, monoatomic iodine, which is exported from your thyroid gland. And there's a very limited amount that the thyroid can do, especially if the thyroid gland is sick or been damaged or just been chronically deficient in iodine. It's a big deal, isn't it, John?
Oh, yes, it is, Dr. Bill. It's a marvelous thing that occurs. And one of the first things a lot of people will tell me they notice is that the brain fog is gone. All of a sudden they can remember people's names.
Oh, yeah.
They can remember events.
It'd be funny, actually. My wife always catches me on Fridays and says, and tomorrow, by the way, we'll be in the first hour tomorrow because she has to do a quick trip. But she'll catch me and say, Bill, they just took Nutridyne and everything cleared. Their brain cleared. They didn't even need a Cognition Plus. Their aches and pains stopped. I'm thinking, I wanted to give them 3 or 4 things, and all they needed maybe was just to start with Nutridyne and see what happens. And a lot of time, it does the trick. Come back to the Nutrimedical Report. And we have Bobby Walton here talking about Alamax and Alamed. We have a lot of people, even over the holiday, purchased quite a bit of Alamax and Alamed. Some of them have been purchasing for years, and by the way, because they're taking it, they're disease-free. And we're talking about diseases like I had a gentleman this morning with a consult where he had a positive Tyne test for tuberculosis. They did a simple chest x-ray, couldn't find a Gone focus, which is the G-H-O-N, Gone focus. He was a pathologist many years ago that discovered this focus in the lung. You could see a granuloma on a simple chest x-ray. They couldn't find it, but if they did a spiral CT scan with thin section cuts, coronal cuts, they probably could have found it, or a bronchoscopy and biopsy, they'd seen the regular tuberculin bacillus. Problem is, if you don't take something like Alamax and Alamed and you have a positive Tyne test, at some point as you get older and your immune system starts to fail, you're going to have TB. That's just the facts. Now, in places like India where the immune system is really bad and you're malnourished, TB doesn't just go and end up in your lungs. It can metastasize to your spine and cause degenerative destruction of your spinal vertebral bodies. It can actually metastasize to your brain or your bowel wall and your liver. It's really nasty, and people should understand it's not just that. Mycobacteria, which are a cousin of TB, is the cause of most cancers besides fungi. Mycobacteria. So when you're taking Alamax, it's a universal antipathogenics, Alamax and Alamed. It's going to clear your body of the type of mycobacteria that are in the canals of Schlemm in the eye that cause intraocular open-angle glaucoma. It's going to cause the nanobacteria in your artery walls that form plaque to take heavy metals, arsenic, iron, and lead, etc., and turn it into oxidized fatty acids and 9-noryl hydroxycholesterol. So there's an amazing array of benefits, including decreased pyrogens in your joints that cause arthritis. And we have people that say they started taking Alamax and said, my joints don't hurt. I'm thinking, what? And we found this out years ago, Bobby. People were telling us they took Alamax and their joints didn't hurt. So, yeah, a lot of people are hooked on it. They're basically, whenever they get a big sale, like every 2 months we have one roughly, they just stock up and say, I want a whole pile of that Alamax or Alamed. Do you have some stories like that?
Hi there, Dr. Bill. Yeah, I mean, everybody's always wanting to know what the best thing is going to be for their health. And, I've been talking to a couple people today who actually gave me some feedback on how they were using the products for MRSA, and they were really pleased with it. They had a stent put in the hospital, and they were suffering and a hard time breathing and things like that, and they didn't know what it was. And when they finally figured out what it was, they started taking Alimed capsules and taking a bunch of them per day to, get rid of the staph infection, which can be pretty serious. You can use the pills, though, for, just daily maintenance and prevention. It doesn't have to be, serious infections all the time. And that's what I personally take it for myself. You want to just, have one pill a day or, 2 pill a day if you want to overprotect. But, getting on airplanes and coming into, hay fever season here now that it's like, spring, or some people say summer, it's a great product to always have around. And if you're not even interested in taking it every single day, then you should definitely have it in the cabinets for when you may need it for, serious conditions.
Yeah, if you're traveling or doing things. And the problem is people don't understand that the world is now, believe it or not, we talked about this last week, there's a doubling of the number of pathogens in animals and humans worldwide since last year. Doubling. And that rate of increase in pathogens is increasing. So by next year, maybe 4 times as much. So we're seeing an exponential explosion. And there's a number of reasons. Firstly, background cosmic radiation, X-rays, and ultraviolet light, because of the change in the upper ozone layer, is pushing what's called the gene evolution and the elimination of weaker gene patterns. And it's pushing it to more we call pathogenic forms of organisms. We have increased international travel, and we have increased international trade from countries where a lot of these endemic organisms are present. So, and if you fly in a flying culture tube in an aircraft, there's no air filtration system because in the early 80s they removed HEPA filters. So if someone coughs in the back and has TB or H1N1 flu or H7N9 from China, from Shandong, China, you're going to get it. And if you get it, you get a 40% case fatality rate, which means 40% of being in the ground in a week or two dead. And people say, this can't happen. I said, it's only a matter of months, maybe years, before we have a major pandemic, not just in birds, which are killing off all our turkeys in Minnesota and our egg-laying birds in Iowa, but going to kill a lot of people. And the case fatality rate for the flu was 2.5%. Back in 1918, it killed almost 600,000 Americans and 100 million worldwide. And the case fatality of most of these other pathogens is in the range of 16 to 25 times higher than that. Not good. And people don't realize that taking something as simple as Alamax may prevent you from getting sneaky bugs that'll give you cancer, or big bad ones that'll just kill you. Like H5N1 flu or H7N9.
Well, right, and I know nobody wants to ever, get sick or end up in the hospital or, miss work for, a bunch of nasty sick days. People, I think, would rather go on vacations, for other reasons and take their time off work. So to me, it seems rather simple. If you have something that you could take, and you could basically take, one every single day and protect yourself, why would you not want to do that? It's like we had talked about, head to toe, we have liquids that you can use in your eyes and ears and, nebulizers, and use it in your shampoo if to shampoo if you need to, if you have lice or dry skin or other things. You can also use the products on your pets. The uses of the Alimax and the Alimed pills are so endless, and it's just truly an amazing product, and that's why, you guys promote it, the Nutrimedical Report, and I've been working with you for all these years, and it's just get the word out. Give it to people, start thinking about Christmas. Put it in your Christmas baskets, and Christmas stocking stuffers, birthday presents, Instead of buying somebody a cup of coffee, buy them a box of Alimax and let them try it and see for themselves, and then they'll be hooked on it.
Yeah, it really is. What they'll notice is their sinuses aren't flaring up, their bronchitis and pneumonia is not flaring up. Their dysbiosis in their gut is getting better because now they're recolonizing with Living Probiotic Ultra. But you got to knock off the bad bugs if you're going to stay healthy. And they're everywhere. I mean, people don't realize the average person gets six cases, the average person, of food poisoning every year with bad bacteria just in the foods they eat at restaurants or the food they take home, like chicken. And these things are increasing dramatically. They're not decreasing, they're dramatically increasing. And the pathogenicity of these organisms is increasing horrendously. And people don't understand, in places in China they have to wear a mask. Well, one of the cellular masks is to just take your Alamax and Alamed every day. And you give it to your pets. So if you don't want to have them have parvovirus B19 or heartworm or all those other parasites, don't give them a toxic drug. Just put it in their dog food every day. You can give it to your budgie birds. You can give it, in other words, it's a universal antipathogenic, and drug resistance can never develop, which is one of the most amazing things to me. Is with drugs, including antiviral drugs like Relenza, you're going to get drug resistance or antibiotics, but you can't with the technology of Alamax Alamed. Drug resistance just can never develop to any pathogen. That's what's really cool about it, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, why wouldn't everybody else think so? I'm not really sure, but absolutely. Seems to me that, right, I mean, drug-resistant antipathogenics, you got to do what you want to do. You got to protect yourself in today's day and age.
Now, one of the things that we find interesting is how many things can benefit. We have people that, for example, start taking it and they say that my hair dandruff stops. That's because they got pityriasis ovale on their scalp. Or they're taking oral capsules and they say my toenail fungus, which I got when I started wearing Western boots, went away after having it 25 years. Or they say my irritable bowel syndrome settled down, or that rash I had and the breakout of psoriasis that keeps on breaking out. Once you kill off some of the pathogens like dermacentor mite in your skin, because it's going to kill off a lot of these. We know the dermacentor mite causes an interleukin 27 in the prickle cell layer of your skin that triggers off psoriasis even. And so taking something as simple as Alamax can actually get rid of one of the triggers because, as I say, it's like raid for these dermacentor mites and little pathogens that grow in their gut. As they come out at night, and as I say, on your skin, they have a red light district, go back into your sebaceous glands and continue to eat the fatty acids that keeps them alive. But if there's a little Alamax there, we're back with Cardiovasc. Cardiovasc, it's our new name for Cardivite. It contains the ginkgo biloba, and of course we have nice new labels for our Cardiovasc bottles. So when you're getting them in the next few weeks, you'll see the Cardivite transition over to Cardiovasc, a beautiful bottle that you've designed, by the way, for Reed. It looks fantastic.
Well,
and I tell you, I wouldn't go without mine. I take whacking dosages. I take 4 capsules twice a day, and I would not be without it. And sometimes when I have short days or I'm too busy, I take a minimum number of nutraceuticals. I will take Cardiovasc, and I'll take a few other things, and it'll make a massive difference. So it's really, really important for people to understand how powerful that is. Yeah, Fried, let's go through some of the components of it and why it's going to reverse a lot of heart disease.
Sure. Well, it's a formulation developed by my dad, as you know. And, my dad's a retired pharmacist, and when he came up with this, he really tried to come up with a balanced formula that will help both your heart and your circulatory system. So it's not just the pump, but the blood vessels also. So the first ingredient that is focused on the pump is hawthorn. And we use a hawthorn that's grown in Europe, and we use a leaf and flower extract.
Exactly. I just got an emergency notice from Michelle. Authorized.net, which handles the internet processing of orders worldwide, is down. In other words, there's a worldwide attack, cyber attack on Authorized.net, and the ability to literally process orders through credit cards. So you have to place your order by phone. If you want to place an order today on the sale day, you have to phone in at 888-212-8871 and give your credit card information. When they're back up, we'll process that order and you'll get the sale price. But Authorized.net worldwide is down. Again, another example of what I call the fragility of society and the danger of cyber attacks that can destroy our financial system and our ability to communicate and do financial transactions. Pretty amazing, eh?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, we'll work around it because we'll just give people a sale price even if it's not back up until tomorrow. So let's continue. So those things you mentioned, Vitexin, the other companies that are trying to copycat, including, and I see commercials on our show and elsewhere, and I want people to understand I do not endorse or authorize people to take these nutraceuticals. If they were better, I would be switching from Cardiovasc to these other nutraceuticals, and I won't, because I don't want to put myself in danger or the people I recommend. That includes things like Heart and Body, Extendivite, Strauss Heart Drops, all these other Me Too's are copycats of your dad's formula, Sam Ibrahim's formula made many years ago, back in the late 90s, for the Chelation Society of Alberta and Edmonton. And he was one of the top trained pharmacognosist from Germany that practiced in Canada. And this formula will do a number of things for you. So let's go through the other components. So please don't take these other copycats. They're not going to be as good. And when they say that these other copycats have been around longer, they're liars. It's not. This is the original formula. This is the most advanced formula. This is the formula based on a specific part of the plant. And every batch is actually high-pressure chromatography tested to make sure the biological molecule is at a stable concentration, at the right concentration of the right part of the plant to actually have its biological action. No other company, period, does this. Nobody. So you have to understand it out there. So you're listening. For God's sake, stop getting nutraceuticals elsewhere other than Nutrimedical. We need your support, but we also want to help you to stay well, not have a stroke or heart attack or get visual problems or lose your kidneys or other problems. And maintaining your perfusion, which is what we're trying to do, is the key here. So let's go through the rest of the components.
Sure. Well, the other major component of Cardiovasc is garlic. And we use an aged garlic standardized to 1% allicin.
Two component things it does. Number one, it's a natural angiotensin-converting enzyme inhibitor, which protects your kidneys and your brain and your circulation. And number two, it kills off the nanobacteria.
Yep.
Very, very important. They form plaque.
Yeah. And so then we have the cayenne and the bilberry.
Cayenne, of course, is going to improve microcirculation and stimulate nitric oxide. The bilberry is a natural dialyzable antioxidant. There's a lot of antioxidants that won't dialyze or get across blood vessel walls of the intimal lining of arteries and veins and capillaries. Bilberry is one of the most powerful and dialyzable, which means it transitions across the membrane because it's small enough and powerful enough that it actually gets across there very nicely. And next.
So, yeah, we've talked about the ginkgo, which we have in the U.S. formula, but not the Canadian formula.
Yeah, ginkgo protects brain circulation. That's why when people start taking it, they say, Doc, I can't believe it. My brain works. I can think now. I'm thinking, that's because your circulation was down. If we did a test, and people say, well, how can you test that? I said, well, there's several ways of testing it. You can do a quantitative electroencephalogram with a psychologist that can measure your voltage patterns, your coherence pattern in terms of frequency and phase of frequencies of different parts of the cortex, or a SPECT, S-P-E-C-T, brain blood flow scan. And you'll see as you start getting older, if you start getting circulatory issues, or you get voltage problems and coherence problems across your brain, your metabolism's changing, your perfusion's changing. As soon as you improve perfusion, the brain says, hey, my astrocytes, which are nerve cells that set up a firing pattern in a neural network, they start to fire again. You can form neural networks, which means it's called thought. And without metabolism, without oxygen, without delivery of perfusion, your brain doesn't work. So as soon as you start taking Cardiovite, this is even before we add Cognition Plus, Brain Power, and all the other fancy stuff like Neurogen, a lot of people start saying, just like we talked about Nutridyne, if they start taking Cardiovite, they say, Doc, all I need is this Cardiovite. I'm happy. This is my budget. My budget's very narrow. I can only take Cardiovite. And I said, well, okay, it's
Cardiovasc.
Yeah, it's called Cardiovasc. And Cardiovasc, basically, the neat thing about Cardiovasc is it's going to restore circulation not only there, but in your kidneys. So if you've got marginal kidney function, or if you've got decreased perfusion to your feet because you're diabetic and you've got crappy microcirculation, remember, this is also tied in with why 1 in 20 diabetics get chronic pain syndromes, because of the vasa nervorum, the actual circulatory system for the outside of nerves, starts to get hypoperfusion, and in response to that develop very nasty inflammatory molecules like tuberculosis factor alpha, IFN gamma, and other inflammatory cytokines. And as soon as you start improving perfusion, the pain goes away because you're now perfusing that vasa nervorum, which is the circulatory system through the outside of the nerves, and the Cardiovasc restores it to normal. People say, well, my doc wanted to give me XYZ. Your doc is a knucklehead. They don't understand. If you simply improve perfusion, you don't need an antidepressant because now your brain is perfused. You stop having seizure activity in the limbic system. You start creating acetylcholine so you can remember stuff in your laundry list of things you have to do. So it's It's almost too simple, isn't it? You improve perfusion and everything starts to fix itself. Even taking other supplements, they work better. I tell people if you're taking other supplements, you're taking cardiovasc, the other supplements will work better, whether it's Collagen Max or your bone generator or anything. If you don't have perfusion, and this is one of the reasons why we see women that get osteoporosis, they're smokers. The reason why they get inflammatory changes in their bone and their bone decalcifies is because they get inflammation. As soon as you start taking cardiovasc, the inflammation goes away and their C-reactive protein level drops, and the markers that cause demineralization of their bones shows improvement. So there's a lot of benefits that you wouldn't expect for doing this, but they're there, which is pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, my dad used to say in German, Kreislauf ist alles, which is just a way of saying perfusion is everything.
Right, and in fact, I tracked down with my contacts in China a perfusion microscope. It's a little more technical than I think people want to buy. I want to get something simple enough, so I'm working to try to find the best, what I call them, micro-technology. I like something that could hook up to your iPhone, and you can stick your finger in it and go, and it would tell you not your blood pressure, but what your perfusion is. Because you see, perfusion is more important than blood pressure. Your blood pressure just simply tells you how bad your heart is trying to compensate for bad perfusion. And in fact, if you lower blood pressure and you're not monitoring perfusion, you can actually reduce perfusion to the point where you can cause somebody to become demented or shut off their kidneys. And last year they came up with the American College of Cardiology to prove that their studies showed they were over-aggressively treating blood pressures down under 160/90, and the dumb doctors that were overdoing this were causing a lot of people to lose their retina, lose their brain function, and go into renal failure. Pretty darn stupid, isn't it? And of course, because they weren't monitoring perfusion, they're saying, well, your blood pressure is too high. That's just your heart compensating for bad perfusion. Your heart's trying to push the blood through because the blood vessels are not contracting. And that's the other thing. Cardiovasc is going to restore metabolism to your blood vessels. The secondary wave, the primary wave is your heart, secondary wave is your blood vessels that move the blood through your body, not your heart. If somebody says your heart pumps the blood around your body, I can show them the non-Newtonian fluid dynamic equations to prove your heart does not pump your blood. It's the primary wave. The most important wave is the secondary wave of your blood vessels that cardiovasc will restore to normal. So without peristaltic contractile waves of your blood vessels, your arterioles, arteries, capillaries with nitric oxide, venules and veins back to the inferior vena cava, you have no circulation. So out there, if you're a cardiologist and you want to challenge me on that, you're going to have a bad day, because Dr. Deagle knows the biochemistry backward, forward, upside down, the physiology, and the non-Newtonian fluid dynamic equations I can quote for you. So that's the way it is. Get cardiovasc today and perfuse tomorrow.